Felicia Rattray decided to launch Permission to Succeed Academy in the summer of 2020 after schools shut down due to the pandemic. And the shift to remote schooling gave her an up-close look at her nephew's classroom. She realized how far behind he was academically and created her program to help students like her nephew with a more personalized, mastery-based, culturally relevant curriculum. The first year of opening, she had 6 students. Now she has 60 students, plus an additional 15 students who attend remotely and 7 full-time instructors. Felicia Rattray, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
Thank you very much.
It's so good to have you here. I was able to meet you in person last fall and visit your beautiful space. Of course, at the time that I visited, you only had about 20 students. And now you're up to 60 plus additional remote learning students. So you have seen tremendous demand for your alternative learning program that's highly personalized, individualized, mastery-based. I want to talk all about Permission to Succeed Academy, but before we get to kind of the present day, let's start with a little bit of your story. How did you become an educator? What prompted you to go into the teaching field? You were a longtime public school teacher in both the charter sector and in district schools. What got you into that work?
Well, I was actually working as a degree conferral supervisor at one of our universities here, Nova Southeastern University, and my staff kept saying to me, we think you're working out of field. And I would always say, what do you mean? Am I not a good leader? Am I not supervising you well? What? And they would always come back with, you're an educator, you're a natural educator. And they said, we love you, but we wondered if you would ever, looked into wanting to be a teacher. And I told them, yes, I did, but I just didn't go down that path. One day, they had a celebration for me and they brought a little black briefcase. And they said, this black briefcase, we hope, motivates you. And I thought, it's a black briefcase. But they said, we hope this motivates you to see yourself more in an educator role. They really did. And go after pursue what's really in your heart to do. They said, we love you, but we would like to see you do that. And I came home that night and I really thought about it. And I said, maybe I should, let me just, I had done some other things in my life and I really did have the passion to be an educator. So I just started applying for jobs. And
when was that, Felicia?
That was in 2007.
Okay.
I believe it was 2007. And I ran into a lot of roadblocks because it was, you don't have the experience. So back then I decided to create some experience by starting a little tutoring company. And I began teaching students on the side just at my home. And from there, one day, a man at a charter school gave me an opportunity. And I've been in education ever since.
Yeah. And so tell us about that experience from the charter school, what that school was like, and then your experience in district schools. What was sort of that career trajectory?
So my beginnings as an educator was from the non-traditional route. The charter school that I started off with was a school called Life Skills, and the name itself is what drew me to it. And so that particular school allowed students that were ages 16 to 21 to attend school and do school in a different way. But it was a charter school. It was a bigger setting, and I had never seen school done that way, where it was a lab setting and students were working on a digitized platform, and they earned their credits. Many of them behind in credits. So they were doing credit recovery. And I stayed on that path for a long time. It I, when I left Life Skills, I went to another charter school through Accelerated Learning Solutions in Broward, and they had the same type of setup. Now, as I was uh, going through my career as an educator there, I developed the desire to also get a degree in school counseling. And so I did that. I worked as a school counselor at the charter schools. And then I also became certified as an ESC specialist for special needs students. I just found that once I got into education, it was just an open field for me. I'm like, oh, wow, I could help so many students in so many different ways. And so I ended up wearing many different hats in the charter school. From there, I did go into the public school sector because I had an opportunity to do the same type of teaching that I was doing in the charter school, which was non-traditional. This school called Off-Campus Learning Center in Broward, which is a public school system, they too offered the opportunity for students ages 16 to 21 to get a high school diploma, get caught up, and work at their own pace somewhat. That always interested me. So I didn't do the traditional style of teaching, but I've always had the opportunity to be in the classroom and teach children individually, groups as well, but just not the same way that you would think in a traditional school. So when I saw the opportunity to create something like that myself, I definitely took it. And it's short. I can't, I get lost for words when I start talking about it, because when I left Sheridan Technical High School, which was a more traditional setting. I moved to Port St. Lucie, Florida, and I worked in a traditional setting there. And that is where I saw, that's when the pandemic and everything started. I wasn't there no time. I mean, 6 months before the pandemic hit. But while I was there is when I was able to see things a little differently from the lenses of my nephew, who's on the spectrum, the medium spectrum. And I saw that it just wasn't working for him. And the experience that I had had working with those older students, ages 16 to 21, on top of seeing the students that I saw as a school counselor, on top of working with the special needs students as an ESC specialist, I realized that I had an opportunity, or that I felt like I needed to do something different, primarily for my nephew and all those others that were like him, to just slow it down. It needed to be slowed down.
So it sort of all came together for you. You're kind of dabbling in alternative educational settings, seeing more creative or unconventional educational approaches, but still within the charter sector.
Right.
Also working in a district school, and your lens as a school counselor, kind of seeing the challenges students were facing, and then your own personal experience with your nephew. All of that came together kind of during the COVID year to propel you into education entrepreneurship. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your nephew. So you had gained custody of him, and maybe share a little bit of how that came to be.
Yes. So when my nephew was 9 days old, my sister was in a tragic accident and it took her life. And so my mother, who lived in Alabama, along with where my sister also lived, she had to become mom overnight. And so I lived in Florida. She lived in Alabama, and my other sister lived in Alabama. So my mom and my sister were raising my little nephew um, until he was about 8, I think 7 years old. And my mom came to me and said, I can't do it anymore. And she was in her 70s, and she said, I can't do it anymore. I need your help. So he came to live with us. And at the time, we did live in Broward County. And so that was my first time having, my children were adults, all of them. I had grandchildren, but I had not. I had to jump back in there and put my parent hat on, like that. And so it, in the public school system, he had an IEP, he has an IEP, and they worked with him the best they could. And we did see gains, but the issue was simply that because of his autism, as well as he had some other challenges as well, some mental health challenges, that school just moved way too fast for him. And the individualized help that he needed, we gave him that at home, but it still just wasn't enough because in school, he's frustrated. Things are moving fast, and he just couldn't keep up. So when we left Broward and moved to Port St. Lucie, it was a smaller setting, a smaller school. So things did slow down a little bit too. But again, when the pandemic hit, it seemed like a spotlight was just shining really, really brightly on how well he could manipulate the systems that he was using. And it would look like he was doing okay, but a deeper look showed that he really wasn't doing okay. And yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really that spotlight for you to recognize that this wasn't working, that this conventional system of schooling wasn't working. And had you been thinking about launching your own school kind of before COVID, and this was just that final trigger for you? Or I guess, what was that kind of entrepreneurial thought process?
Yeah. In 2018, actually, I put the school in motion, to be honest. I did all the legal pieces of it because I kept feeling like it was my calling to do my own thing because of all the things that I had seen. And I was a little afraid to just jump out there and do it, truthfully. But when it became very personal to me with my own nephew, and seeing that with the onset of COVID, I said, I can do this. I know I can do this. I know I have what it takes. I have a method. I have my theory of what would work. And I applied it with my nephew. And when I saw him go from kindergarten level to first grade level to second grade level, and now he's in the 7th grade and he's functioning on a 6th and 7th grade level, I'm very glad that I made the leap because it works. It works.
Congratulations. Yes. I mean, you said that during that kind of COVID year, when you saw the remote learning, you realized that he was several grade levels behind where he was as an enrolled student, and that you were able to catch him up now in quite a meaningful way, and other students as well. So one of the things I think is really great about how you approached launching Permission to Succeed is that you collaborated with another local microschool founder who's also been on the podcast, Laurel Suarez, who runs Compass Outreach and Education Center, that she launched pre-COVID. She was sort of one of the earlier microschool pioneers, and offered some space to you to lease to really get going, because you only had a handful of students in that fall of 2020. But you were only there, a few months, maybe 8 or 9 months before you found your own location, and then we're off to the races. But I wonder if you can talk about how helpful that was, how valuable that was to sort of
Oh,
incubate your program initially.
absolutely, Carrie. Finding a place to get started is one of the most challenging things when you're starting your own school. Um, I don't know if it's everywhere, but I know in South Florida, it was very difficult to find the proper space with the proper zoning that you can afford. And when you're starting off with a handful of students, most places you can't afford. So it was invaluable. I feel like I will forever be indebted to her for that. And I'm so appreciative, because I often say that if she had not given me the opportunity, I had 180 square feet in her. I had a corner in her school that I was allowed to use for my school. And I'm also grateful that the requirements for school through, the Department of Education didn't make it difficult for me to open up, because I was a school within a school. So they did not frown upon that. They allowed us to flourish. Um, my original plan was to use her space as yet another in a non-traditional way. Originally, it was going to be that I would do school from like 2 in the evening until 6, 2 in the afternoon until 6 at night, and on weekends. So I was trying to be innovative and do something different. But there wasn't a great need for that at the time. So I can see where it is now,
Mm,
but then it wasn't.
mm.
So yet again, because she allowed me to open up and use her, she opened up her space to me, and I used that. From there, the word started spreading a little bit, you know. I had now a space to use, and the word got out, and I needed more space.
Yeah. And
So
I wonder if we can talk about specifically why the finding a space was so important to you, because you wanted lower income students to be able to attend, who would be eligible for one of Florida's tax credit scholarship programs, or one of their special needs ESA programs. Now Florida just this summer passed a universal education savings account program that applies
yes,
to all K-12 students. But previously, Florida had a history of kind of robust school choice policies specifically geared towards low income and special needs students. And that was a priority for you. So instead of just opening a learning pod or some kind of homeschool co-op, you really wanted a physical space and to be an established school so that you could expand access. Is that how it was for you?
absolutely. Yes. I felt like people who fell in the lower SES category, um, I felt like I needed to be that space, that voice. I needed to bring a platform for them, especially single parents. I was a single parent for many, many, many years, and there were so many things that I wish I could have afforded for my children. I wanted the best for my children, just like everyone else, and yes, you work hard to get the things that you need for your children. There was a time when I worked 3 jobs just to make ends meet. But I could not afford private school. That's the one thing I just couldn't make happen where I lived at the time. Um, so when I looked at starting the school again and expanding the school, growing the school, I wanted to make sure that it was affordable, but I had to have a place in order to make that happen, because without a physical location, you cannot have a school number. Without a school number, you can't go through the steps of being in compliance to be able to accept the scholarships. Now, I could have opened, without that. But then parents would have been tasked with having to pay out of pocket. And so I
Yeah.
had to have a space.
And I
Yeah.
think you told me that when we talked last fall, when you only had 20, now you're up to over 60, that only about 2 of those families would really be able to afford Permission to Succeed Academy, that everyone else really relied on that, those school choice policies, those scholarships.
Yes.
And yet your tuition is already intentionally low. It's much lower than other private schooling options and still financially inaccessible to many families without those school choice policies. What is your tuition now for families?
Well, I did just go up this year to 10,000 for the year, but I gave everybody $1,000 off. So it went from 8,500 to 9,000
Yeah.
and for the year. And although it's a 10-month year, they get so much because I don't stop over the summer. I still let them have access to the curriculum that their children were working on throughout the summer, so that we can still so we don't have those learning gaps for when they come back. So yeah.
Yeah, and yet and that's still so much more affordable than other private schooling options in the area, but even more accessible now thanks to the school choice policies and of course now the expanded universal ESA in Florida. So you incubated Permission to Succeed Academy, kind of built up your recognition in the community, families starting to hear about you, and then in the spring of 2021 you moved just about a mile down the road, right, from Compass down to some beautiful rented classroom space from the Salvation Army. And that's where you continue to be today, really colorful space with outdoor access, wonderful location for kids. How are families, I guess, why are families attracted to your program? What are you hearing from families as they find you?
Well, I can say, first of all, that I have not had any advertisement yet, other than when you, with the article that you so beautifully wrote on me, that gives some credibility. But word of mouth has been my best marketing tactic, right? And when people come to our school, they tell me that what they love the most is that their child will have individualized teaching, whereas we identify, they tell me that they like the fact that we aren't just going to put them in a fifth grade class and give them fifth grade level work. No, we're going to put you in your fifth grade class, but identify what your true skills are. So if you're in the fifth grade, but you're on a second grade level, you're going to get second grade work. And we're going to meet you where you are and build you up so that you could do that fifth grade work with confidence, with fidelity, with a high self-esteem, knowing that I can really do this. And so what I've heard a lot is that parents have told me that they've seen their children read and be excited about reading, whereas before it was like pulling teeth. I had one young lady who had a very bad math phobia. She would break out in hives. She would sweat. Her anxiety would go through the roof just mentioning the word math. And since she's been coming to us, which has been, she's in her 4th year with us now, she's not only caught up to her true grade level in math, but math is now her favorite subject. And it's because of how we take a very holistic approach to getting to know your child, and helping them overcome the barriers that have been hindering them from learning. When a child can't read, they know they can't read, and they know that they aren't doing what maybe some of their peers are doing. They can see and feel the difference. So we make sure that every child is not, we make sure that they're not put in a situation that will embarrass them and that they have to like that so that they don't stand out like a sore thumb, you know? And those are the kinds of things that we're hearing. My child has confidence now. My child doesn't mind trying to read aloud. My child wants to go to school. That's the big one. We don't know what you're doing over there, but he said he didn't feel well, but he was going to school. So and then the other
Yes.
day, a parent told me this child, a kindergartner, had been with us for just a week, and her words were, he's exactly where he needs to be. I see a difference in him now. So we just take a parent approach. We take the stigma of I'm the teacher, you're the student type thing away, which I believe that's what all educators want to do. That's how they are. But because we're small and micro, I'm like the grandma of the school, and I take that role seriously. And my teachers are like the parents. And so that's the energy that we give to the babies, and we show them that we care about them as soon as they walk in the door. If they're looking sad, we aren't just going to say, are you okay? And they say no or yeah, and leave them alone. No, that's our project for the day. We're going to dig deeper and get you in the right headspace and help you get better, overcome whatever's affecting you.
And then all that joy shines through. I mean, I hear this over and over from not only parents, but entrepreneurs running microschools or unconventional learning models, that the kids love to be there. I always hear these stories about kids begging their parents to go to school sick because they love to be learning in that environment. And if that isn't a metric of success, then I don't know what is. I mean, these are, beautiful learning spaces where children are taken care of, as you said, nurtured, encouraged, and really enabled to go in their own pace with their learning. And maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, Felicia. You mentioned about how your nephew, as you spotted through remote learning, was sort of able to play the game, right? Was able to sort of manipulate the system and make it look like he was learning or doing the work, but wasn't really doing that. How is that different in your program? How are you able to assure kind of authentic learning?
So we take the building blocks approach. And so the digital platforms that we use, which for one, we find the one that works for the child, for one. So we don't just have one curriculum. We have found one, though, that works well with everyone, but we still employ the other ones as well. But we take the data that we see, and the results of the diagnostic, of course, places the student where they're supposed to be. Then the aggregated data shows as they're going through a learning path, this child, my nephew, let's say, so it shows in math that he's having difficulties struggling with multiplying fractions. I'm sorry. One of my students, unfortunately, received a fractured leg, and I've been saying fracture ever since instead of fractions. So he needs help with fractions, right? So we identify he needs that. So he's working in his learning path. We do a pullout during the day. We work with him individually. We have the supplemental worksheets and manipulatives to help him understand the concept, and he practices. But we don't leave it there that day. The next day, we come back and retest. We just have a conversation, and we just keep building up to make sure that come Friday, you now can do what you had learned on Monday. And then next week, even though a new task might be identified as, okay, there's another area of need that he needs help with. It's in math. It lines up with fractions. So we go back, we redo what we learned, and then we add on the new task. So we teach to mastery. It's a conversation. And it's a rinse and repeat type thing. It's just like the military. I learned that in the military. It's very, very important, consistency, and that's something that the school system knows well too. Being strategic and being systematic and being consistent is key. So we rinse and repeat. That's the method. So if come Friday, my nephew can't remember the steps that he had done all week, it's okay. It's all right. Let's go back to the drawing board and let's maybe do it a different way and let's start over. But we try not to introduce a new concept, a new skill, until we can see that you have mastered this one thing that we're working on now. Yeah.
Amazing. And you also focus on a real culturally relevant curriculum too. So not only are you finding the right learning tools for your students and making sure that everything's mastery based, but you're also trying to make sure that the curriculum is relevant to their experiences and their backgrounds. I wonder if you can share more about that vision.
So during enrichment time, we try to bring in other things like what's part of our enrichment? Financial literacy through FEE. As a matter of fact, we're using a lot.
Yeah. Wonderful. Through FEE.
Yes.
Great.
Yep. Coding, entrepreneurship, but then we also have multicultural studies. The majority of our students are African Americans. So we try to teach about African studies. But our other students that are Hispanic, or we had a child that's from Germany, we bring in their culture as well. And we bring the multicultural studies for them to learn about their histories, and so that they too can feel good about where they come from and who they are. It's to make sure that every child has a well-rounded view of themselves and pride, because that's a part of learning. Again, if you feel good about who you are and know who you are, that I believe that they're more open and receptive to learning. So it's just an important part of our culture at the school. We want that to be the climate of our school, that every student has to be made aware of how important they are, and very important for them to know who they are.
Really great. And so you're seeing so much growth. I wonder what percentage now do you feel of your students, say the 60 that are in person in your program, what percentage of them are attending through some of the school choice policies in Florida, whether it's the scholarship programs or the new ESA?
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that what did the universal ESA like shift over to include more families, or I guess what was the percentage before that went into effect this past July?
And see, in July, or let's say June, I'll say June 30th,
Yeah.
I had about 25 students.
Oh,
but
wow.
it seemed like July 1st, when it went into effect, it seemed like everybody just started flocking, and everyone had the scholarship. Homeschool families were coming out of the woodworks, saying, I have this new thing, and and I've heard about you. Some people heard about me at I think the Microschools of South Florida, and then the Ed, I believe it was. We had some like vendor events, and I was there, so I had a chance to meet families. But a lot of them were like, I have a friend whose child goes here, and I heard about you, and I have this scholarship now. What can you do? And it just rocketed from there. And not to mention, I believe what I did was I made the enrollment process easier. I think by me saying, yes, my fee is $630 for everything, but you can have a discount. Because
Mhm.
I think that families were looking for, yes, they want the best thing for their students, but they also were trying to see how they could spread those dollars, because now the scholarships are all being used the same way. In the past, the FESEO and the FTC had a cap where all it paid for pretty much was that tuition for school. And and that was it.
Mm.
However, the UA scholarship or the McKay scholarship, Gardner scholarship,
Yeah.
those scholarships, if you had monies left over, then you could use it to buy other educational supplies, or you could use it for other things for your child. Um, and so now, what they've done here in Florida, all of those scholarships can be used in the same way. So now the FTC and the FESEO, families are looking for lower tuition so that they can have money left over, so that they can use money to pay for a dance class or pay for some other type of enrichment for their children.
Right.
Um, by coming to our school, it freed up some of their money,
Yeah.
and they're getting a top-notch education.
Yeah, and I just think it's amazing that your program basically tripled almost overnight
Yes, it
from
did.
20 students to more than 60. And that was really because of this sort of universal ESA program. Your school is a recognized full-time accredited private school, K to 12. But you also said that you service homeschool families. Are they able to do sort of these part-time options as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're able to come in half days or even full days.
Mm,
Um, they can come full days, but maybe 2 to 3, two
yeah.
to 4 days a week or something like that. But absolutely,
Yeah.
I have now that they have what's called the PEP scholarship. I have a few PEP students where they only come to our school for math. That's
Yeah.
it. 1 day a week for our math program, and the scholarship pays for that. So
And of that boost that you got over the summer in enrollment, what did you find of those families? Were they families who had previously been enrolled in public schools? Were they already in a private school or homeschooling? What was their story?
um it's it I believe it was a combination of a little bit of that, of it all.
Yeah.
I have some who said, hey, I heard about this, my child goes to XYZ public school, and we've been, looking for something else, and now we have this money, didn't know about it, so heard about you, here we are. And then you have I had already had several students, of the 20 something students I already had, a good bit of them had converted from homeschool
Mm,
to the private school, to our school. So the homeschool families, that's a big community. And
yeah.
so when the word got out about the scholarship, my family spread the word among the homeschool communities, and I received more homeschool families. Some of them converted, and some of them stayed under homeschool.
Mhm.
Um, I have I don't have as many students coming from other private schools,
Mm.
but I do have a few. I do have a few that left the school that they were at for one reason or the other. But most of our students are from public school or homeschool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this is tremendous growth in a short period of time. And I know that when we talked last fall, you said that your longer term goal was to have a permission to succeed academy in every county in Florida. Now you are positioned to have, over 60 students. Kind of clearly there's a demand for this kind of educational offering. How are you managing growth, and what is your vision now for the future of scale?
So I want to make mention that I started off, as you said, as Permission to Succeed Academy, and I've now since changed the name to Permission to Succeed Education Center and converted my structure to my legal structure to a nonprofit, because I felt like that it was more of a giving back to the community type environment. So when you came to our school, I think I was operating out of 2 rooms or maybe 3.
Yeah,
If
I think it was 2 at the time. Yep.
yeah, if you can envision all of those rooms now are filled.
Wow.
So I've reached my capacity. I feel that for each location, that's enough. So you're right. Now I have my sights on hopefully opening up here in Port St. Lucie, but I also there's a co-op in Bunnell, Florida, I believe it's called. Bunnell, and she's called the Underground Homeschool, I think it is. So I'm looking to maybe provide a service for her and any other school or homeschool who needs support and service, right? So my vision is the same, that I want private schools in every county in Florida, but I also want to show others how they too can either open up a micro school, private school, co-op, or something, because there are so many students who need us. There couldn't be enough schools. We can't open enough. We need more people to open up those little pods and give what they can give to the children within their reach. I don't care if it's 5 or 10. If I open up a place with 10 students in each one, I'll feel like I've reached my goal and showed other women and men how to do the same.
Yeah,
Because
and those little pods, like you started with 6 kids, can grow in just a couple of years to 60 kids, particularly
yes,
now with these robust school choice policies. So what advice would you have, Felicia, for anyone listening in Florida or out of state who wants to be an education entrepreneur, maybe an entrepreneurial parent or teacher who is looking to create a model like yours? What advice would you give to them to get started?
the first advice I would give them is to not be afraid that there are others out here who have done it, which means it can be done, and who have overcome the challenges, and to know that they would have a support system. So overcome your fear of doing it. I would say to identify which target audience you would want. What particular students would you want to work with? So, and create a theme. Like some schools have the nature education theme. Other schools have skateboard and science. Other schools have whatever their specialty is, entrepreneurship. Find a theme that will make you stand out, and but make sure that it's your passion, first of all. I don't care if it's earthworm digging, whatever it is, there is a need for it. There's someone out there who's waiting for you to open up and show up so that they could utilize your services. So identify who you want. Some schools only want special needs students. Some schools only want females, males. So just identify who you want. Then do your due diligence and start looking at getting the right team in place. Having the right support team in place would be important. It's real easy to just kind of look to the people that you already know, like your friends and your families, because there's talent within your circle already. Don't be afraid to use them. And after you identify a team, let's see, just Research the area that you want to put your school, because there are some legalities that you can, some hiccups that you can run into. So although I want to be encouraging to you to open up, I want you to know that there are going to be challenges, and don't let them stop you. Don't
Like
let them
what?
stop.
Can you give an example of some of those hiccups?
Yeah, some of the hiccups is the zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Zoning is a huge hiccup. It's all in the wording. It's the minute you say, I want to start open a school, private school. It's like, oh, okay, well, um, you need to have this specialized something. It's like the county has all these rules and regulations. For instance, I wanted to open up a school in one of the little towns in one of the little areas in Broward. But because I said that I was trying to do the evening thing, because the way I described it to them, they told me I couldn't. They said I would have to be a tutoring center. And I said, okay, well, I'm doing tutor style teaching, but they just wouldn't budge. And I really wanted that location. It was the perfect location, high foot traffic. It was perfect for me. So I would say make sure you research where you're going to put your school. Don't just go and sign a lease in somewhere without doing your research with the zoning. That's what I'm trying to hone in the most.
And hopefully, we can get sort of regulatory apparatus to catch up to this innovative education ecosystem, and maybe lower some of those regulations, make it easier for education entrepreneurs to start and scale your schools, so that it's not such a hiccup, so that you're not encountering all of these unnecessary barriers and these protocols that are often in place for schools that have, 1,000 students, not necessarily 20 students or 60 students, and yet you're ensnared in some of those regulations. So really interesting. I also really love your point, Felicia, about really focusing on your mission. Who are the students that you're serving? I know you have a real passion for serving neurodiverse students, as well as students who might be academically behind, and helping them to push more into their potential, and really targeting a curriculum towards their needs, as opposed to making them fit into some kind of one size fits all curriculum. What percentage of your students at the moment would you classify as neurodiverse?
About 5%.
Okay. And the rest would be more academically behind,
Or
and
advanced.
or
Or
advanced.
Yep, let's see, my advanced students, I would have, yeah, I would say I have about 5% of advanced students as well,
Okay.
because I do have one student, because she could work at her own pace. She went from 5th grade to 7th grade in like a year. And it's like, wow, okay. And I have a couple of other students who, although they came to me in middle school, I let them sit with the high schoolers, which is where they were supposed to be. No one knows it. No one but them know that they're truly in middle school, but age wise, they should be in high school. And they sit there and they do their work. And because the work is individualized, nobody knows who's working on what. So they sit there among their peers like they're supposed to, and they work diligently to catch up. And when they do, then they just continue, take their rightful seat in high school and continue, you know? So the diversity is much wider than it was when I first started.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So I know I've taken up so much of your time, but I love chatting with you, Felicia. I'd love to just hear, maybe as we end, your reflections. What have you found to be the most rewarding part of being an education entrepreneur these past few years?
Oh, don't bring tears to my eyes. Um, it is so rewarding to me to see, especially the students that started off with me in the beginning, who are still with me, one, to see how much they've grown, you can see the confidence in them, on their faces when they walk. They have such a pride uh, look, a proud look when they come to school. It's like they don't look intimidated. So to me, to know that they're walking with their heads up high, and that's one of the things that we teach them too. When they're walking, when they started with us, they start off low. Because like I said, they know that they aren't where they could be. And I had my grandson, who was, I can't read, Mama. That's what he says. I can't read, but that's not him now. Now he's reading everything. He's, and his chest is poked out, and his friends. It just makes me feel good to see their growth. And then when our new students come in, I see our older students embrace them and make them feel like, hey, look, you're part of our family now. We got you. This is going to be a good thing. We had a student who recently did come from another private school, and when she came to our school for the first day, she cried and cried and cried. But my little girls, my babies, formed a welcoming committee, and they surrounded her and they embraced her and made her feel like she could do this. And now she doesn't want to leave the school. She doesn't want to, she's made new friends. And this is all within the last few weeks, she feels like she's a part. So for me to know that my families and our students are really a part of my personal family, and they feel the same for me. They'll call me on a Saturday and say, hey, I have this situation, want to talk to you. Is it okay? I'm gonna be out a few days. So we have this, bond, and it's gone, it's grown in such a way. Now my nephew has a lot of brothers and sisters, because that's how he looks at them. He doesn't look at them like classmates. They're like his brother and sisters, and I get lost for words with that too. I always almost cry because I know what we're doing works. And when the child recognizes that especially my baby who could not do math well and would just have all types of anxiety, she's flourishing in other areas of her life because she overcame that challenge of being able to do math well. So now we've adopted a penmanship program to concentrate on making sure children can write very well, clearly, and a math program where we're hoping to put a heavier focus on math, because math and reading, because we know that those are the areas that the students really have the biggest challenges. And if they can do those two areas, all the other subjects will be a piece of cake.
Such a special place. I'm so glad that it's growing, that you're reaching more students, that you're inspiring others to do the same, that you're partnering with local organizations to help more children. What is the best way for my listeners and viewers to connect with you and learn more about Permission to Succeed?
Oh, if you're wanting to see more about our school, you can go to the word success hyphen the word education.org. That's the easiest way. And our phone number is there, but I can give you that. It's 954-397-2793. You can reach me that way or through the website.
And your background, you still have permission to succeedacademy.com. That will also still work.
Yes.
So that's another avenue to connect with you. And I'm just so thrilled to talk with you. Best wishes on your future success. I'll be seeing you in Florida again in a couple of weeks with that incredible cohort of education entrepreneurs in South Florida. So Felicia Rattray, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie. I appreciate it.